what we have to remember when we're looking at objections is the foundation of the way we communicate. What I mean by that is prospects are going to lie. They are going to say things that are untrue. And the worst thing that we can do when we're handling objections is make the prospect wrong. The moment I make a prospect wrong is the moment they no longer want to work with me.
Good morning and welcome to another Real Estate First Friday. My name is Fermin, Executive VP here at LPT Realty, and I am not joined by Matt Hodge today. He's actually on vacation with his family. And also special happy birthday to his son, whose birthday weekend is this week. So happy birthday, Mason. Today we're joined back with Sam K out of California. If you joined us last week, you were introduced or you were able to see Sam K talk through these notions of objections and how to position yourself appropriately when you are communicating with your consumers and your consumers are ultimately giving you objections. And Sam had an amazing quote that he used last week, which was, an objection is nothing more than an unanswered question in the consumer's mind. So we'd love to elaborate more on this subject matter this week. Sam, let's bring you in, and good morning, man.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Lewis. Thanks for having me back. I love talking about this topic, so I'm very excited to be back and going deeper with all of you today.
We've been on, I would say, dozens of Zooms over the last 2 years, and I've never seen you with that background.
Yeah, felt fresh outside today, so.
Very cool. Well, awesome, man. So let's jump in. I mean, do you mind? Let's start off here. Let's maybe elaborate on that quote that you provided last week for some of those who may not have been here last week.
The quote was, an objection is nothing more than an unanswered question in the client's mind. And this is important because if we peel back the layers of the onion, we have to ask ourselves, why is it that we're so against prospecting and we get so nervous and we're hoping that we don't get objections? At the very core of a sales conversation is the idea that people want to feel heard and understood. People want to be in the position that they feel comfortable and confident. And that means that they're going to have to overcome their own mental hurdles. And oftentimes those are unanswered questions. So when we talk about objections, we have to be real with a couple of things. One, we have to understand that there's a difference between an objection and a condition. And we'll talk about that further. An objection is what we hear all the time. It's the, I want to think about it. It's the, I'm not quite ready. It's the, I don't want to work with an agent. It's, we're going to do this on our own. There's so many objections. And then there's conditions. Conditions are statements of fact that we can't overcome. And an example of a condition would be, actually, I'll give you a perfect example of a real life story. I think we talked about this last week. I'm not quite sure. We have leads on the team, and there's a lead that has been haunting our agents for quite some time. This lead has looked at the most homes, has favorited the most homes, has, been back to the site more than anybody else. So she's like, the system thinks she's the hottest lead. And nobody could convert her. So I call this lead in front of everybody, and I'm on the phone. I'm handling objection after objection. And finally, after about 13 minutes, I say, I got to be honest with you. I'm a little confused. You seem like you're really motivated and you know what you want. So let me ask you, what has to happen before you decide to take the step towards finding the home of your dreams? And her answer was, well, I think I should have a job first. Okay, great. You got to have a job first. That makes sense. Are you the only person on the loan? Yes. Are you planning on buying all cash by chance? Nope. Don't have any savings. That was a condition. And why it's important to be able to tell the difference between an objection and a condition is because you have to remember this and write this one down. The bad leads hide the good leads. The bad leads hide the good leads. And by uncovering objection versus condition, now I know that we can essentially rip that lead up and put it in long-term nurture. And it doesn't ruin our agent's day by calling someone that they think is truly motivated, but never sets an appointment, right? So JC said, we have been working with the same lead. So anyways, we have to understand the difference between objection and a condition. Now, when we think about objections, I want you to think about yourself in any scenario where you're the prospect, you're the client, and think about how often you throw out objections for no other reason but it's your natural instinct, right? I know I'm buying a car. I walk onto the lot. I know what car I want. I know what color I want. I know the specs I want. I just want to get in the car. I want to hear the engine roar. I want to smell the new leather. I walk onto the lot. The salesperson comes up to me and says, "Hey, can I help you?" And what do I say, Lewis?
I'm just looking.
I'm just looking. Why the hell do I say that? Why the heck do I say that? I say that because we have to understand that consumers are naturally wired to try to slow down the sales process. A good salesperson would say, I completely understand you're here to just look around. Well, tell me, while you're here to look, which one are you most excited to get inside of? Continue the conversation. When we think about objections, I want us to remember that most objections are nothing more than smokescreen or unanswered questions. What can we do to get better at handling objections? Because if you remember last week, Lewis, what we talked about was the average conversion when we're prospecting, the average appointment is set after 7 to 8 objections are handled. So that means that we have to have the skill set to handle 7 or 8 objections if we want a shot of setting an appointment. But most of the time, agents just don't have the confidence, the knowledge, the wherewithal to handle simple objections and continue the conversation. What we have to remember when we're looking at objections is the foundation of the way we communicate. What I mean by that is prospects are going to lie. They are going to say things that are untrue. And the worst thing that we can do when we're handling objections is make the prospect wrong. The moment I make a prospect wrong is the moment they no longer want to work with me. Earlier, I said they want to work with people that are just like them, people that they feel have their back, people that make them feel comfortable and confident. So when a prospect says an objection, and even if it's not true, the worst thing I could do is tell them that they're wrong. Instead, I'm going to say, man, I completely understand. You want to wait until the holidays are over to sell your home. That makes a lot of sense. A lot of my clients initially felt the same way, so I completely understand where you're coming from. Do you mind if I take a minute and quickly explain the problems that might create for you? As opposed to saying, no, you don't want to wait till the new year because right now, inventory is low, and low inventory means better buyers, right? We can say the same thing, but positioned a different way. And in one example, I'm making the prospect wrong. And in another example, I'm asking them for permission to help them look through a different perspective. So I say that saying, pull back and zoom out onto all the conversations you've had. And remember the formula of our job is to find objections. And then when we get an objection, we repeat what they say, we give them words of approval, and then we ask the next most logical question to keep the conversation moving. Lewis, any thoughts or questions on this? obviously have stuff I can go deeper on, but I want to make sure we're tracking.
No, absolutely. So how you just wrapped up that last piece, this concept of like zooming out, that is so important, because when we are entering into these initial conversations with the consumers, we cannot be of the mindset where our intention or what we're trying to accomplish is to try to get them to buy or sell a house. Like, we're not there yet. And being able to zoom out and go in there with the mindset of understanding that our mission right now is to understand the objections, understand who our clientele is very important. And then we have to tackle those objections head on. It's so appealing for us as agents to go after the low hanging fruit, right? It's the ones that don't bring up the objections and the ones that are easily, able to be converted. But those are the ones that then force us to leave so much business on the table, because we're not taking that 6th, 7th, 8th extra step. As you said, we have to overcome on average 7 to 8, 8 to 10 objections before we can even get them to that place. And the whole thing that you mentioned about, recognizing whether it's an objection or a condition, that's totally going to help us organize the sales funnel, because as we're doing this business, we are going to come across so many different mindsets of consumers, so many different types of objections, so many different types of circumstances that if we're not filtering it correctly, we are going to be bogged down behind the noise. Imagine like in that example that you gave, if we have like 20 consumers who are all per the definition of what's a great consumer is meeting that definition, and then we're getting bogged down by 20 people. But then there's these other 20 that, because we're not taking those extra steps, we are not going in there and unpacking the actual objections and conditions. We are not able to properly extract the appropriate consumers from those dynamics.
Yes, 100%. Now, let's take this a bit further and think about the client psyche. Okay. For all of us, dealing with the real estate transaction is normal, right? It's what we do every day. For them, it's arguably, statistically, the biggest financial decision of their lives. So they're already like, they're jittery, they're on the rocks, they are nervous, they are looking for someone to have the authority to take them to the promised land. So what does this mean? It means when we think about objections, what the client is doing is actually interviewing for the person that makes them feel the most safe, the most secure. It's not like they went to objection handle or objection school and Lewis had a class that said, hey, this is how you're not going to get sold. You're going to say all these things. No, it's just a natural reaction that everyone just has, is to throw out these smokescreen, these objections, because this is a big decision. So what this means for us is changing the frame in which we look at sales conversations, and understanding that objections for us as agents, they're actually our friend, because the more objections you handle, the more sales you're going to have. So yesterday we were in our team meeting, and we were talking about the leads that have come through for the week, and agents were like, man, so many people just say like, the leads say they actually weren't looking, or the leads say that they're just thinking, or the leads say all these things. Like, it's so difficult. And I said something that I think really impacted our agents yesterday, and I want to share with you today, which is the idea of the reality. The idea of the reality is the most successful agents are the most rejected and most embarrassed agents. What I mean by that is, in order to do a lot of volume, to get a lot of yeses, that means you have to be able to withstand a lot of no's. And in this business, we're searching for the yeses. We're searching for the people that will say yes, but that is surrounded by a bunch of no's. So if we can't get our minds around the fact that the no's are what actually make you the money, it's not the yes. When I was in production, I knew that I averaged 78 no's for every appointment. And at the commission, at the time, prices were much cheaper, but I knew my commission was like $7,000. So all of a sudden I knew that every no was making me about $100. Every no is making me about $100. So after 20 no's, I've already made $2,000. After 50 no's, I've made my $5,000. The point I'm trying to make here is when you get comfortable with handling objections, then all of a sudden, this chore of prospecting, the thing that we all avoid because we don't want to be rejected and we don't want to be embarrassed, if we reframe it and get good at it, then we understand, or rather recognize, that what we look at as a chore right now actually turns into a game. You don't like to do things that you're not good at. You don't like to do things you're not comfortable at doing. So when you get good at handling objections, the best thing that comes out of it is the game of prospecting turns into a game that you know how to beat, a game that you can win. And that propels you into more phone calls. It propels you into more confidence. The reality is there's only 20, 25 objections that exist. The objections are always the same. So if we learn the 20 to 25 different objections and we learn how to handle them, then we can step into confidence when we get on these calls, looking forward to objections. When you can reframe your brain to understand that objections make you money, then the phone becomes a lot less heavy. The phone calls become a lot more fun because I am in the game. I am a professional objection handler, and that's what makes me the money. So this is my piece of advice. For one, it's okay to practice on real live people, because the only way you're going to get good at objection handling is by talking to people. So don't be afraid to practice on real live people. But then when you get an objection, let's try to simplify this as easy as we can. When you get an objection, I want you to repeat what they say and give them words of approval. Here's the magic about this. Not only does it tell the prospect that you hear them because you repeated what they say, and by giving them words of approval, it says that you're with them. But Lewis, what do you think one of the other benefits that most people don't see, and maybe you might not see it, what are a major benefit of me in real life, in real time, throwing back to the consumer their objection, repeating and approving what they say? What is the unobvious benefit of that?
Well, I mean, I feel like you're neutralizing the playing field, right? Like you're neutralizing the grounds of the conversation with that consumer.
Yes, you are. But you're also giving yourself time to actually think about what to say next. See, if you think about it, your brain has like 100 thoughts in like 2 seconds. You're like, so if I turn it into a programmatic, robotic, whatever you want to call it, if I make it so that it's very natural for me to repeat and approve what I hear, then it opens it up so that I can think about what to say after I repeat and approve, because it's that next most logical question that keeps the conversation moving. So what does this mean? This means that questions help you find motivation, and questions help you find their unanswered questions. When I find motivation, then I've really found out what I'm selling. I think I said this last week, but none of us are actually selling real estate. None of us are actually selling a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot home that's $800,000. That's not what we're selling. What we're selling is the benefits the client will receive by being in that home. They are getting the benefit. They are buying, getting closer to their grandkids. They are buying a shorter commute to work. They are buying an extra bedroom because their family's growing. They're buying a one level because they're getting older. They are buying something that represents the removal of some sort of pain that they have in their life, or the addition of some sort of enjoyment, right? Like, I buy this house because I like to entertain. So I didn't buy this house because it was as big as it is and priced as it is. There's a lot of homes in the area that have the same characteristics, but this one has the backyard that entertains and I can enjoy my friends and my family, right? I was buying experience. So you have to ask these questions and get good at handling objections so that you can really uncover their true motivation and their unanswered questions. I know we're coming up on time, but I want to share a couple of like cool little one-liners that we can all use, but let me check in with you real quick, Lewis, before I keep going.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that resonated very quickly with me is, I mean, you keep sharing this point of like, hey, like, we want to get as comfortable with the consumer as quickly as possible. And we've all been there, right? Like, we've all been there where we've experienced that moment where we've gone from feeling not necessarily comfortable with the consumer to all of a sudden we're just jiving, we're just flowing. We are interacting in a different place. And like, you feel differently when you're with this customer. That's where you've now transcended to like winning this concept, right? You got them there. You got them feeling comfortable. And going back to like the no consumer, right? Like the consumer who's consistently giving objections and saying no, think about it this way, right? Like this consumer is merely somebody who is extremely selective with who they're ultimately going to want to trust. And if you can break through that barrier, like you've got there now. Like you've captured this consumer. You've taken them off the market. You're no longer at risk that this consumer is ultimately going to find another agent. You know, we, again, always love the customers who are going to say yes quickly. We call them and they're going to say, yeah, come to my house. You know, give me a listing presentation. More often than not, those consumers, they're going to have 5, 6 listing presentations lined up in the horizon because they're just freely telling you yes and telling other agents yes.
The easy ones are the hard ones.
The easy ones are the hard ones because now you're competing with other agents. The ones that are saying no, it's because how many agents have already aborted the mission? How many agents have not built that trust? How many agents have not taken those extra steps to be able to be in position to take them off the market? So if we understand that that's the dynamic that we're experiencing, we can now tackle it from a totally different vantage point, not from a vantage point of frustration because this person's not inviting me into his home today. It's a vantage point of excitement because I have an opportunity to win this client over because I see the personality trait of this consumer. If he's doing it with me, they're probably doing it with other agents. And this is my opportunity to win this difficult client because once I win him, now I have a lifer in my database.
Yes. And that's so good. Lewis, you just said, you know, they're being selective. Yes. But also remember that they're just being nervous. Like this is a big freaking deal for them. Yeah. So their nerves show up and make them say the stupidest things. They want someone that brings the authority, the confidence. I tell this story. Mike Ferry was my personal coach for many years. And I would work with him one-on-one. And he told a story that really resonated with me. And I'm going to leave you guys with 2 final thoughts. One of them, this story. His wife ended up having cancer and they went to go meet a bunch of doctors. Okay. And When you're searching for a solution, in this case, for something that's frankly terrifying, right? Like your wife is ill with a serious disease. What are you looking for more than anything? You're looking for certainty. You're looking for authority. You're looking for someone to make this world that started spinning crazy out of control in your mind, someone to slow it down and bring some calm to your world. Your clients feel the same way. But in this example, they go and they interview a bunch of doctors. And every doctor comes in, they're well put together. They have everything presented properly. The last doctor they go into, the guy comes in, shirt half untucked, his glasses like half on his face, his hair's all messed up. He comes in and he's just like on the surface, they're like, oh shit, this is not the doctor. But he comes in and he says, Mr. and Mrs. Ferry, you listen to me because none of my clients die. I know I'm 100% confident that I can help cure your wife. This disease does not control it. We control the disease. So if you want a doctor that's going to give you all the theories, then go elsewhere. But if you want a doctor that's going to make sure your wife lives to see another day, I'm that person. I save lives. My clients don't die. And that's the person they ended up hiring. Why? Because he brought that authority. He brought that sense of security. What's my point? Remember that these clients are being selective and they're being anxious. So your job is to be the calming force of the transaction. Your job is to be the calming force of the transaction. And you do that by handling their objections, by making them feel safe, heard and understood, comfortable and confident. Be the calming force. And the calming force means that you're going to be patient with their objections. It means that you're not going to make them wrong. It means that you're going to stay curious. I want you to be the most curious agent there is, because the most curious agents are the most successful. Because why? They ask more questions. Curiosity is the golden ticket to success when it comes to sales. One last thought, I know we're up against the clock, is when you're talking, you're going to get objections that you just don't know how to handle. So there's a couple of like little get out of jail free cards that we can use in sales conversations. One of them is the client says whatever, and you just don't know what the hell to say. Okay. Lewis throws me the wildest objection, throws me completely off guard. I'm going to approve what Lewis says. And then I'm going to say, Lewis, tell me more about that. And I'm going to shut up. Because now Lewis is going to tell me more about this thing that I have no idea what the heck he's talking about, nor how to handle it. But now that I said, tell me more about that, that now affords me the opportunity to try to slow down the conversation in my brain and be able to pivot the conversation in the direction that the client needs. So use the tell me more about that. Use the I'm not quite sure I understand what you're saying. Do you mind saying that another way? If for nothing else, just to get them to talk so that you have time to think about how you're framing the conversation, right? Those little like get out of jail free one-liners, they're worth their weight in gold, because one of two things happens. They either give you time to think about what to say next, or often the client ends up talking themselves out of the objection that they just gave. When you say, tell me more about that, they just start talking, and oftentimes they will serve you the solution to their problem because they just keep talking. Our jobs get easier when we accelerate their emotions and their words. So when we repeat and give them words of approval, that's like patting them on the back, saying, go get them, I'm with you. It encourages them to keep talking. And the more they say, the more we know. And the more we know, the more we can use to make them feel comfortable and confident, heard and understood, because they are interviewing you without realizing or actively thinking that they are interviewing you. So the best thing that we can learn to do is use objections to slow down time. The best athletes are the ones that can slow down the game on the court. The best salespeople are the ones that can slow down the game on the phone, in the conversation. And using these objections and using these little nuggets gives you the opportunity to slow down the game, slow down the conversation so that you can start to control it. And I'm going to take us back to what we talked about last week with permission-based selling or permission-based question asking. Remember that I am dangling the carrot where I want the client to go by asking questions that are directive to the direction I want them in. So when you do that, the client feels like they're in control, which is what they want. But asking questions that takes them to the promised land is the best positive manipulation one can do, because it keeps the prospect in the position of thinking that they're still in control. But I am the orchestrator that is directing the conversation in the direction in which we want it to go.
Fire. That last line, Sam, was absolute fire. Thank you so much for joining us this week, man. Also, thank you for joining us on a back-to-back and coming in here today with a part 2 and expanding upon what we discussed last week. I know there was a lot of information that you provided that was super valuable. Please, guys, there were so many nuggets that were dropped on today's Real Estate First Friday. If you did not capture all those nuggets, rewatch this episode. Sam definitely brought out the heat. So thank you guys for joining us this week, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Real Estate First Friday. Thank you.
Appreciate you all. Thank you.